banners were unfurled. God stepped into the world, held in the arms of a little girl named Miriam. Who would ever believe your fiancé, your family, a teenage pregnancy of Miriam? The laws of nature were suspended, death sentences rescinded throughout all the world, all because of a little girl named Miriam. Medieval paintings glaring down, stony figures judge and frown, wearing a halo like a crown. Could that be Miriam? And Gentile temples, stained glass swirls, a cherubim with golden curls. How unlike your Hebrew world, oh Miriam. I don't know if you ascended, I don't care what's been amended. There was one sure miracle in the faith of a little girl named Miriam. Oh, you are blessed indeed. Blessed is the fruit of your tree. Yeshua, King of Kings and Son of Miriam. No banners were unfurled. God stepped into the world, held in the arms of a little girl named Miriam, named Miriam. The Yuletide season, a time when friends and family come together to celebrate the year that is drawing to a close. The house is decorated with a seasonal tree glowing with lights and ornaments, each with its own story: wreaths, candles, garlands, and even some mistletoe for those stolen kisses. Parties are held and conversation flows freely as people reconnect with each other. My friends and family are invited over for a leisurely get-together. Sauerbraten, German pot roast. Moravian cake, part of the candlelit love fest in the Moravian church on Christmas Eve. Nana's apiece cookies, so thin and so translucent and so mouth-watering, they melt on the tongue. Kiffles filled with dates, Toll House cookies, mincemeat pie, hot mulled wine, eggnog rich and creamy with, of course, a smooth kick to it, and Christmas coffee and tea. After all the food and drink and a little rest to help digest the food, it is time to gather around the fireplace and share remembrances of holidays past. Now get comfortable for an evening of shared stories and memories. The room is lit solely with pine-scented candles. The first person starts to speak. The stories begin.
September 21st, 1897. The New York Sun. Is there a Santa Claus? We take pleasure in answering at once and thus prominently the communication below, expressing at the same time our gratification that its faithful author is numbered among the friends of the Sun.
Dear editor, I am 8 years old. Some of my little friends say there is no Santa Claus. Papa says, if you see it in the sun, it's so. Please tell me the truth. Is there a Santa Claus? Virginia O'Hanlon, 115 West 95th Street.
Virginia, your little friends are wrong. They have been affected by the skepticism of a skeptical age. They do not believe except what they can see. They think nothing can be which is not comprehensible by their little brains. All minds, Virginia, whether they be men's or children's, are little. In this great universe of ours, man is a mere insect, an ant in his intellect, as compared with the boundless world about him, as measured by the intelligence capable of grasping the whole truth and knowledge. Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. He exists as certainly as love, generosity, and devotion exist, and you know that they abound and give your life its highest beauty and joy. Alas, how dreary would it be if there was a world without Santa Claus? It would be as dreary as if there was no Virginias. There would be no childlike faith then, no poetry, no romance to make tolerable this existence. We should have no enjoyment except in sense and sight. The eternal light which with childhood fills the world would be extinguished. Not believe in Santa Claus. You might as well not believe in fairies. You might as well get your papa to hire men to watch all the chimneys on Christmas Eve to catch Santa Claus. But even if they did not see Santa Claus coming down, what would that prove? Nobody sees Santa Claus. But that's no sign that there is no Santa Claus. Most real things in the world are those that neither children nor men can see. Have you ever seen fairies dancing on the lawn? Of course not. But that's no proof that they're not there. Nobody can conceive or imagine all the wonders that are unseen in an unseeable world. You may tear apart the baby's rattle to see what makes the noise inside, but there is a veil covering an unseen world which not the strongest man or even the entire strength of all the strongest men that ever lived could tear apart. Only faith, fancy, poetry, love, romance can push aside that curtain and view the picture of the supernatural beauty and glory. Is it all real? Ah, Virginia, in all this world there is nothing else real and abiding. No Santa Claus? Thank God he lives and lives forever. 1,000 years from now, Virginia, nay, 10 times 10,000 years from now, he will continue to make glad the heart of childhood.
Huntington Hall, December 25th, 1895. Dear Lord Gilbert, how delighted I was to receive that dear little partridge in the pear tree. Whenever I look at him, I shall think of you. But he does look rather lonely and cold. Maybe he would be better off with a muffler. Oh, thank you so much for such a thoughtful gift. Yours lovingly, Catherine Huntington.
Huntington Hall, December 26th, 1895. Dear Lord Gilbert, the 2 turtle doves have arrived safely and are cooing in the pear tree with the partridge. My head gardener is building a new dovecote, as the old one is not quite suitable for them. The partridge still looks lonely, though I cannot think why. Yours, thankfully, Catherine Huntington.
Huntington Hall, December 27th, 1895. Dear Lord Gilbert, how enchanting the 3 French hens are. Do they really come from France? The turtle doves are quite happy in their new dovecote, and I think I will put the French hens with them. My dear little partridge looks even more unhappy, and I cannot think of what to do. Gratefully, Catherine Huntington.
Long, long ago, in the time of lords and ladies, castles and kings, monsters and dragons and magical rings, there was one who told, to young and old, tales of all these things. The tale-teller was traveled from village to village with his leather satchel over his shoulder, telling tales in exchange for a hot meal and a place to sleep, and perhaps a new tale or two to take along his way. For tales are meant to be shared. If they're not told, they crumble to dust. On the night my story takes place, the town people were rejoicing with the news that the tale-teller was coming. The lords of the manor had opened the house for Christmas, and all the peoples from miles around came to eat, drink, and listen. Among the listeners was a young maiden, a peasant girl, who was collecting food in her apron for her sister lying sick at home. They lived alone, their parents having died. When the tale-teller entered the hall, the people cheered. "Tell us a story! Tell us a story!" The old man smiled and set his satchel down at the table. He opened it, and in, those who sit by him could see that it was filled to the brim with polished stones. "I've prepared a new one for you," he said, and he picked one of the stones from the top. Grasping it in his right hand, pressing it against his heart, he closed his eyes, took a long, slow breath, and opened his eyes. "Once upon a time, there dwelt a father and 3 sons," he began. His hand never left his heart. The listeners leaned forward, hardly breathing, not wanting to miss a word. The story was a thrilling adventure, and when the tale-teller finished, the listeners cheered. The tale-teller took the stone away from his heart and placed it in the satchel. "Another! Another!" they shouted. "A funny one!" "Ah, here's one you'll like," said the tale-teller, choosing a small red stone out of the satchel. He placed it over his heart as before. "One day in the forest, a fox met a bear." Soon the listeners were weak with laughter, and the tale-teller finished. They shouted, "Another! Another!" "Do you have a love story?" said a young couple nearby. The tale-teller smiled and said, "Of course." And he reached into his satchel and pulled out a silver stone shaped like a teardrop. A long time ago lived 3 sisters. As he told the tale, tears formed in the eyes of the listeners. But the lovers had to undergo many trials to test their love. But there was one listener whose eyes were not wet. This man was a thief, and he had come to the feast for the free food, not the stories. And when he saw the silver stone, his interest in the tale-teller grew. Easily, like a snake, he slithered through the crowd until he stood beside the table where the satchel lay. His practiced eyes scanned the stones within. These were no ordinary stones. He would have to have a jeweler look at them, of course, but he was willing to wager that he was looking at carnelians, opals, and jades, and other semi-precious stones. He hadn't even noticed that the tale-teller had finished his tale. The old man set the teardrop-shaped stone in a satchel right before the thief's eyes. It was solid silver. A stone like that would fetch a good price, thought the thief, and he waited for his chance when suddenly it came. "My friends, I have to go refresh my thirst, but I will return shortly," said the tale-teller, and he left his satchel open on the table. The thief snatched the silver stone and slipped it into his leather bag that hung from his belt. He glanced around and grabbed another handful of stones and slithered into the night. The tale-teller, returning with a frosty tankard, saw him go, stroked his beard, and sighed. Soon the thief arrived at the home of the jeweler. "What would you give me for this?" he asked, reaching into his pouch, feeling for the large stone as he pulled it out. "Nothing," the jeweler said. "Common stones such as this are found along the roadside everywhere." "What?" said the thief. He peered at the stone again in the candlelight. He could have sworn it was silver, but now it looked like an ordinary rock. He turned the pouch over and dumped out all the stones. Every one of them was a common pebble. "I don't understand," said the thief. In the tale-teller's hands, these stones were different. "Ah, so that's what happened," said the jeweler. "These are story stones. They can't be sold. Did you listen to the stories?" The thief shook his head. "Without the stories, they're completely worthless," said the jeweler. "Go on your way. I'm going to bed." Well, back at the hall, the tale-teller had returned, and the listeners were again begging for a tale. What to tell? His eyes searched the room, and they settled on a young maiden with an apron full of food. "I know what she needs to hear," he thought. "Ah, there's the perfect stone. A heart-warming tale. In a certain time, in a certain place, there lived a peasant girl. His eyes never left the young maiden. And when he finished, she needs this story, he realized. She needs this story even more than I do. And when the tale was done, the girl moved through the crowd until she stood beside him. "Would you come to my house and tell my sister that story?" she begged. He looked at her a moment. Then he picked up the stone and placed it in her hand. "I think you need to be the one to tell it," he said. The girl excitedly hurried home with her apron full of food and the stone clutched tightly in her hand. Her sister was lying on the bed, feverish and weak. "I have brought you something wonderful," said the girl, opening her hand. "Oh, no. It was a plain, ordinary rock." She closed it quickly in her hand to hide it. She would have to pretend. She would have to place her hand over her heart, just as the storyteller. She took a deep breath. Suddenly, her mind was flooded with images, feelings, everything that had been in the story. In a certain time, in a certain place, there lived a peasant girl. She stumbled over some of the words, but the images remained, and she found new words. Her eyes never left her sister. And when she finished, her sister's face was radiant. "Oh, what a beautiful story. Could you tell it again?" "Of course." The girl put the stone over her heart again, and again the images washed over her. The words came easier this time. "This is better nourishment than food," said her sister. Again, please." And through the night, the story was told again and again, and each time more smoothly. When the morning sun came through the window, it shone on two sleeping girls, and in the hand of one of them was a stone of bright, shiny gold.
"1962. I was 6 years old, and two strangers came to our house in Ritzville, Washington. They talked to my parents, and then took me and my 5-year-old brother John to the dime store. They said, 'Pick out Christmas presents for you and your family.' This was unprecedented. We didn't know who these guys were. We didn't want to be greedy. John chose a stuffed Felix the cat. For me, I chose a piano, a toy piano, the babiest of baby grands, just the size for my doll. We couldn't open the boxes until Christmas, but during the wait, I dreamt of playing the tiny instrument. Christmas morning, Daddy screwed the legs on, and I began to plink away, imagining that I was like our church pianist, Mrs. Jingling, filling the church with the sound of her gleaming black grand. My piano had 8 keys in the C major scale. The black keys were painted on, but the white ones really worked. The first song I played was Mary Had a Little Lamb. But soon I discovered I could play a song that used all 8 notes. It was my favorite Sunday school song at the Ritzville Church of the Nazarene. When he cometh to make up his jewels. The jewels were little children, and I loved to imagine myself sparkling. Mama, I can play jewels! Pink, blink, a blink, 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 a blink, blink. Why, yes, I recognized it. Daddy, I can play jewels! You sure can, honey. Mama, can I play jewels in church? I don't know what possessed me to think that Mrs. Jingling, who was in charge of all music, would let a little kid play a toy piano in the middle of Sunday worship. But for some reason, she said yes. And on that big day, my braids were so tight they pulled my eyes apart. I stood on a booster step, put my piano on the podium, and I began to play. There's something magical that happens when a performer is in the zone. The audience's breathing slows, causing a hush to fall over the room. They begin to breathe as one, their hearts to beat as one. They begin to feel the feelings that the performer is feeling, all feeling everything together. They're in a trance. And if everything is just right, the audience will give that emotion right back to the performer like a wave. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was, in my imagination, shrunk down to the size of my doll, and I was playing a concert grand. I plinked the last plink, and I looked up, and that wave washed over me, and I almost fell off the stool. And the man said, "Praise Jesus!" And that broke the spell, and I grabbed my piano, and I rushed down to the pew. My heart was pounding. And after church, everybody was going, "Oh, what a charming child." And I just stared at my saddle shoes and tried to be invisible. It took me years to understand what had happened. But once I learned to trust myself, I found that the best way for me to perform was with the open heart of a child. And for that journey of discovery, I have to thank those 2 strange guys. And who the heck were those guys? John and I puzzled over it for years. Finally, I asked my dad, were those 2 guys with a charity or something? No! Those 2 guys are with the Eddie Bauer catalog. The Eddie Bauer catalog? Well, my dad worked as a lineman for the Northern Pacific Railroad, and his job took him way out into the wilderness, and one day he'd driven up to the train tracks, and there all over the tracks were posing these very attractive models wearing the latest in Eddie Bauer outdoor wear, and there was a photographer with a fancy tripod and very expensive-looking camera equipment on the very level railroad ties. And my dad shouted, "Get off the tracks! There's a train coming!" and the models and the camera equipment got off just in the nick of time. A locomotive came swooping around the curve. They'd come in right behind a hill, and they said, "How did you know?" Because they knew. They almost died. And my dad pointed to the semaphore light, which signaled to those who could read it that a train was coming. And they asked for his name and address. And not that long afterward, they showed up at our door. Now, my dad has never been the kind of guy to take money for doing the right thing. But he let those two guys take his kids to the dime store. May your Christmases be filled with imagination, discovery, music, and stories, and most of all, with love.
Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it's queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep.
Huntington Hall, December 28th, 1895. Dear Lord Gilbert, how did you know I would like 4 calling birds? They simply delight me with their singing, although they can be rather noisy. They are quite friendly with my darling partridge, so I cannot imagine why he looks so sad. The French hens and the turtle doves are cooing in the dovecote. I wonder if I can introduce them to the calling birds. Yours, Catherine Huntington.
Huntington Hall, December 29th, 1895. Dear Lord Gilbert, I cannot express my thanks for those lovely golden rings. I cannot possibly think of how you knew the sizes. They fit perfectly. They will match my new satin dress that I will wear tonight to Lady Wentworth's ball. This evening, I will wear my sapphire chain to match the rings. I simply cannot stop looking at them. You are so thoughtful. My little partridge is shivering with the cold. I think I'll make him a woolen suit. Oh, thank you many times over. Yours forever, Catherine Huntington.
Huntington Hall, December 30th, 1895. Dear Lord Gilbert, thank you for your unusual gift of 6 laying geese. My big problem is where to put them. They are, at the moment, ruining my new croquet lawn and hissing. Can you tell me what to do with the eggs? No one seems to want to buy them. I dare not keep them, for 6 geese are quite enough. The partridge is now warm in his new black and white suit. Sincerely yours, Catherine Huntington.
Huntington Hall, December 31st, 1895. Dear Lord Gilbert, we had to put the 7 swans in my lily pond. They are a bit cramped there, and my lily pond is an absolute wreck. Also, I do not know what to feed them on. I think my partridge is afraid of them, and that will just not do. Lady Catherine Huntington.
Of all of Kiri Ito's joys, the thing she loved the best was to play her prized piano when the sun had gone to rest. I used to hear her notes drift down along the silent water as Kiri played her notes and scales for her dear sons and daughters. Now me, I play piano, but not as good as Kiri. She went in for that long-haired stuff, but my, she played it pretty. The old piano had a tone would set your heart to aching, but it was always sweetest, though, when it was Kiri playing. In December, when the Seventh Fleet was turned to smoke and ashes, the order came to confiscate their fishing boats and caches, and Kiri's husband forced to go and work in labor camps, and Kiri left alone to fend and hold the fort as best she can. The music did not drift as often up the cove from Kiri's house. And when it did, it sounded haunted, played with worry, played with doubt, for Kiri knew that soon she too would be compelled to leave. And the old upright would stay behind, and Kiri, she would grieve. I loaded Kiri on the bus with stoic internees. The crime that they were guilty of was that they were not like me. And if I was ashamed, I didn't know it at the time. They were flotsam on the wave of war. They were no friends of mine. Then I went up to Kiri's house to tag all their belongings and set them out for auctioneers who'd claim them in the morning. And one thing that I thought I'd keep and hold back for myself was that haunting, ivory upright that Kiri played so well. But Kiri had not left it there for me to take as plunder. She rolled it down onto the dock and on into the harbor. The old upright in a stranger's hands was a thought she couldn't bear. So she consigned it to the sea to settle the affair. So many years have come and gone since Kiri's relocation. I look back now upon those times with shame and resignation. For Kiri knew what I did not, that if we must be free, then sometimes we must sacrifice to gain our dignity. Yes, Kiri knew what I did not, that if we must be free, then sometimes we must sacrifice to gain our dignity.
My name is Francis Tolliver. I come from Liverpool. 2 years ago the war was waiting for me after school. To Belgium and to Flanders, to Germany to here, I fought for king and country I loved dear. It was Christmas in the trenches, where the frost so bitter hung. The frozen fields of France were still, no Christmas song was sung. Our families back in England were toasting us that day, their brave and glorious lads so far away. I was lying with my messmates on the cold and rocky ground, when across the lines of battle came a most peculiar sound. Says I, now listen up, me boys, each soldier strained to hear, as one young German voice sang out so clear. He's singing bloody well, you know, my partner says to me. Soon one by one each German voice joined in harmony. The cannons rested silent, the gas clouds rolled no more, as Christmas brought us respite from the war. As soon as they were finished, a reverent pause was spent. God rest ye merry gentlemen, struck up some lads from Kent. Next thing, song was Steely Knock, this silent night, says I, and in two tongues one song filled up that sky. There's someone coming towards us, at the front line sentry cried. All sights were fixed on one lone figure, trudging from their side. His truce flag like a Christmas star shone on that plain so bright, as he bravely strode unarmed into the night. And one by one on either side walked into no man's land. With neither gun nor bayonet, we met there hand in hand. We shared some secret brandy, and we wished each other well. And in a flare-lit soccer game, we gave 'em hell. We traded chocolates, cigarettes, and photographs from home. These sons and fathers far away from families of their own. Young Sanders played his squeeze box, and they had a violin. This curious and unlikely band of men. Soon daylight stole upon us, and France was France once more. With sad farewells we each began to settle back to war. But the question haunted every heart that lived that wondrous night: whose family have I fixed within my sights? It was Christmas in the trenches, where the frost so bitter hung. Oh, the frozen fields of France were warmed as songs of peace were sung. For the walls they'd kept between us to exact the work of war had been crumbled and were gone forevermore. Yes, my name is Francis Tolliver. In Liverpool I dwell. Each Christmas comes since World War I. I've learned its lesson well. That the ones who call the shots won't be among the dead and lame. And on each end of the rifle we're the same.
Huntington Hall, January 1st, 1896. Lord Gilbert. 8 cows give so much milk that soon we shall have to put the swans to swim in it. The cows made a noise last night that I could hardly sleep. I also now have to pay 8 milking maids. My partridge is cold from drinking so much milk. Lady Huntington.
Huntington Hall, January 2nd, 1896. Lord Gilbert, one of the 9 fiddlers seems to be out of tune. What with their scraping, the cows mooing, pails clanking, honking, hissing, and cooing, I have a slight headache, and my partridge does not like it at all. Lady Huntington.
Huntington Hall, January 3rd, 1896. Lord G. Faraday, your gift of 10 drummers is quite unwelcome. They are making me mad. Lady K. Huntington.
Huntington Hall, 4th January, 1896. Lord Faraday. The 11 ladies dancing are quite outrageous. They make me quite ill. Honorable Lady Huntington.
Shoo! Shoo! Huntington Hall, 5th January, 1896. Dear Lord Faraday, Lady Huntington has retired to her London home with the partridge. She is suffering a nervous breakdown. She has requested me return these gifts to you. 12 leaping lords, 11 dancing ladies, 10 drummers, 9 fiddlers, 8 maids milking, and their cows, 7 swans, 6 laying geese, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a pear tree. She wishes to keep the partridge and the rings. Percival A.E. Bowles, Secretary to Lady Huntington.
Once, there was a young farmer and his wife. Their farm wasn't doing well. They barely made enough to get by on, and they often wished that things were better. One day, the farmer was sitting under a tree, eating his bread and cheese, when he looked up and saw an old woman coming toward him. She looked tired and hungry from her journey. "Come here. Come and sit with me here under this tree and have some bread and cheese. You look like you need it more than I." She sat with him and ate and said, "You are a kind man and you deserve a great reward. Tomorrow morning, take your axe and head east toward the sun. And when you have walked straight east a full day and a full night, you will see the tallest tree in the forest. Cut it down, and you will find your reward." And so eagerly the next morning, the young farmer set off with his axe on his shoulder. He walked all day and all night, and the next morning he saw the tallest tree he had ever seen. He took his axe and he cut it down, and as the tree fell, a nest fell from its branches, and from the nest rolled 2 eggs. One broke, and a tiny bird hopped out and began to speak. The other egg. Take the other egg, break it open. In it is a ring, a wish ring. Place that ring on your finger, and when you are ready to wish, turn it 3 times, and state your wish aloud. It will be granted. But beware, beware. The ring has one wish only. So take care what you wish for. The little bird flew away, and the farmer took the other egg, broke it open, and he took out a ring. He placed it on his finger, and with a light heart, started his long journey home. As he traveled, he passed through a village where merchants were laying out their wares that day. One was a jeweler with trays of rings. The farmer stopped and held out his ring to the jeweler. "What would you say that this ring is worth?" The jeweler sniffed at it and said, "Not a straw." "Oh, you're wrong," said the farmer. "This ring is worth more than all your rings put together. This is a wish ring. All I have to do is turn it round my finger 3 times and state my wish aloud, and whatever it is will be granted." "Indeed," said the jeweler. "How fascinating. You know, you look tired and hungry. You've been traveling. Please stay this night with me. Perhaps offering hospitality to the owner of the ring will bring me good fortune as well." The farmer was tired and hungry, and so he accepted the jeweler's invitation and went home with him that night. He ate a large meal and laid down to sleep. While he slept, the jeweler crept into the room and pulled the wish ring from the farmer's hand and put it on his own. Then he took a ring from his own stores that looked very much like the wish ring and put it on the farmer's finger. The next morning, the farmer thanked the jeweler for his hospitality and left for home. And when he was gone, the jeweler locked the door. And then he went to the windows and he locked all the windows. When he was certain he was alone, he turned the ring around his finger 3 times and said, "I wish for 1,000,000 pieces of gold." And suddenly, gold came crashing down upon him. He screamed and he tried to run out of the way, but the gold kept coming. He fell to the floor and he tried to crawl and claw his way to the door, but the gold kept coming. All of a sudden, with a creak and a crash, the floor gave way and the jeweler, screaming, fell down into the cellar, and the gold kept coming. The townspeople outside heard the screams and they tried to open the door, but the door was locked. They tried to open the windows, but the windows were locked. And someone grabbed an axe and chopped through the door. And there the townspeople could see, down in the cellar, was the jeweler, dead, covered with 1,000,000 pieces of gold. One of the townspeople even was heard to comment, "Doubly unfortunate is he whom blessings kill." But what about the farmer? He was happy on his way home, and when he arrived, he cried out to his wife and he said, "Look, our troubles are over." He held his hand out and said, "Look, it's a wish ring. All I have to do is turn it around my finger 3 times and state my wish aloud, and whatever it is will be granted." His wife said, "Oh, I know what we should wish for. There's a rich, beautiful piece of land right next to ours. If we had that land, our farm could prosper. We should wish for that." But the farmer shook his head and he said, "No, let's not waste this wish on something that we can work to earn." And so they did. For that rest of that season, they got up earlier, they stayed up later, and they worked harder than they ever had. And for the very first time, their tiny little farm earned them enough profit that they could buy that piece of land. "You see," the farmer said, "we have the land and we still have the wish." And his wife said, "I know. We need a horse and a cow. We should wish for a horse and a cow." But the farmer said, "No. Now that we have that piece of land, let's work to earn that horse and cow." And so they did. They worked harder than before. And that year, Their farm produced so much bounty that they were able to buy a fine horse and a cow. "You see," said her husband, "we still have the wish. We have the land, we have the horse, we have the cow, we have the wish." "Oh," his wife said, "I know what to wish for. I would love to have a child." And the farmer said, "Oh, we don't need a ring for that. Let's just see what God brings." And a year later, they had a beautiful baby boy. In the years to come, they had many more children, all beautiful, healthy, strong, hardworking as their parents. The farmer and his wife built a fine big house. As their family grew, they added to their land and their livestock. And his wife began to talk seriously about using that wish at last. "You work so hard," she said to her husband. "You could use that wish to take life easy." But her husband said, "Not yet. We still have our health. We're doing well in all ways. Let's save this wish for a time when we really need it." And so his wife stopped mentioning it. Now, to be honest, over the years, the farmer often thought about using that wish. Many times over, he would turn the ring round his finger 3 times. But he was always very careful never to wish. Years went by, and the farmer and his wife grew very old. One night, very peacefully in their sleep, they both passed away. All of their children, and their children's children, and even their children's children's children gathered in the home, weeping over the 2 caskets. Their oldest daughter looked down and said, "Oh, Papa's ring. I would love to have Papa's ring to remember him by." But their eldest son said, "No, let's let it be buried with him. There was something mysterious about that ring. Do you remember how he used to turn it round his finger and how Mama used to look at it? There was something very special about that ring. I think perhaps she gave it to him when they were very young." And so the farmer and his wife were buried with the wish ring, which wasn't a wish ring after all, but had brought them more joy and more good fortune than any wishing ever could.
Now, what is it about the holidays that makes juveniles of us all? Makes grown men and women act like kids and turns on the spigot of creative juices full blast. Well, we think we can take something popular, tinker with it, improve upon it, then claim it for ourselves. Can't leave well enough alone. All right. So what's my point? Just this. Clement Clark Moore penned the poem "Twas the Night Before Christmas" in 1822. And it has been the subject of creative geniuses everywhere ever since.
Yes. Well, let's see. You've got your Canadian "Twas the Night Before Christmas." There's a moose about the house, eh? You have your X-rated "Twas the Night Before Christmas," and we won't go there. The college version. "'Twas the night before finals, and all through the college, the students were praying for last-minute knowledge. And it gets worse from there. Dalmatian style, hipster Christmas, the tormented, angst-ridden, darkly gothic version. And we definitely won't go there. Oh, and your politically correct version.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and Santa's a wreck. How to live in a world that's politically correct.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, and not a creature was stirring except Papa's mouse. The computer was humming, the icons were hopping, as Papa did last-minute internet shopping.
'Twas the nocturnal segment of the diurnal period preceding the annual Yuletide celebration, and all through our place of residence, kinetic activity was not in evidence among the possessors of this potential, including that species of domestic rodent known as mus musculus.
Hey, you finished? The family was nestled all snug into beds while visions of meatballs danced in their heads. And a wife in her silk nighties, and I in my spaghetti tea and an old Yankees cap, had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When up on the roof, I heard a big crash. I thought it was a burglar. I was gonna catch it.
No.
But, all right. I went out on a fire escape, looked up in the sky, and what do I see but this freaking fat guy with a red suit and boots that come up to his knees. In the moonlight, he looked just like Dom DeLuise.
The stockings were hung by the modem with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas would bring new software. The children were nestled all snug in their beds while visions of computer games danced in their heads. The letters to Santa had been sent out by Mom to Santa Claus at toyshop.northpole.com, which now have been rerouted to Washington State because Santa's workshop has been bought by Bill Gates. All the elves and reindeer have had to skedaddle to flashy new quarters in suburban Seattle.
Hosiery was meticulously suspended from the forward edge of the word wood-burning caloric apparatus, pursuant to our anticipatory pleasure regarding an imminent visitation from an eccentric philanthropist, among whose folkloric appellations is the honorific title of Saint Nicholas. The prepubescent siblings, comfortably ensconced in their respective accommodations of repose, were experiencing subconscious visual hallucinations of variegated fruit confections moving rhythmically through their cerebrums. My conjugal partner and I...
Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, the whir and the hum of our satellite platter. It turned toward that new Christmas star in the sky, the Santa light, owned by that SpaceX guy. As I sprang from my bed and was turning around, my computer turned on with a jingle bell sound.
Santa's workers no longer would answer to elves. Vertically challenged, they were calling themselves. And labor conditions at the North Pole were alleged by the union to stifle the soul.
As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane... What kind of fancy crap is that? As he leapt off the roof, it became clear to me that this guy was looking to steal my TV over his shoulder. He had a big sack. He came down the stairs while I planned my attack. I waited a second till the time it seemed ripe, bopped him on the head, bada bing, with a pipe.
And as for the gifts, why, he never had a notion that making a choice could cause such a commotion. Nothing of leather, nothing of fur, which meant nothing for him and nothing for her. Nothing which might be construed to pollute, nothing to aim, nothing to shoot. Nothing that clamored or made lots of noise, nothing just for girls or just for the boys.
His visage was wider than it was high, and when he waxed audibly mirthful, his corpulent abdominal region undulated in the manner of impectinated fruit syrup in a hemispherical container. I finished.
After centuries of life that was simple and spare, St. Nicholas now is a new billionaire with a shiny red Porsche in the place of his sleigh and a house on Lake Washington just down the way. It is Microsoft's Santa that kids can't resist. It's the ultimate software with a traditional twist. Recommended by no less than that jolly old elf, and on the package a picture of Santa himself.
I said, hey, yo, Santa, I'm sorry, all right? Not for nothing, he said, but this just ain't my night. I'm out all freaking night. I'm busting my hump, but I can't finish now, not with this lump. So do me a favor and be a real pal. Take over for me. Be Santa Sal. So that night, I was Santa, bringing kids joy and bliss. And if you don't believe that, hey, jingle this. Since then, I've been with him each night in the cold, riding shotgun with Santa, because he's fat and he's old. And I'm his number one helper. I've been deputized. So on this Christmas Eve, don't you be surprised if you hear a voice say real loud and abrupt, Merry Christmas to all. Thanks a lot. Hey, shut up!
So, Santa just stood there, disheveled, perplexed. He just could not figure out what to do next. He tried to be merry, he tried to be gay, but you've got to be careful with that word today. His sack was quite empty, limp to the ground. Nothing fully acceptable was to be found. Something special was needed. A gift that he might give to all without angering the left or the right. A gift that would satisfy, with no indecision, every group of people and every religion, every ethnicity, every hue, everyone, everywhere, even you. So, here is that gift. It's priced beyond worth. May you and your loved ones enjoy peace on earth.
Peace on earth.
Peace on earth.
Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were all nestled, all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap, when out on the lawn there rose such a clatter. I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore up the shutters and threw open the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave luster to midday to objects below. When what to my eye, wondering eye, should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before a wind, hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. And so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my hand and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur, from head to foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his sack. His eyes, how they twinkled. His dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, and his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up in a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of his pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad little face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was a chubby, plump, right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know that I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, and turned with a jerk. And laying a finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down on a thistle. And I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight,
Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it glows. All of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names. They never let poor Rudolph join in any reindeer games. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Santa came to say, Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight? Then all the reindeer loved him, and they shouted out with glee, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history. You'll go down in history.